If you're talking about it, we're talking about it. Today's News Talk Radio, TNT.
Welcome back to the Pelle Neroth Taylor Show on TNT. Our third guest today is Kacee Allen, who's a 23-year-old journalist who hosts a show of that name, the Kacee Allen Show. He's an American patriot and freedom fighter, and is going to talk to us about the problems on the southern border and other issues that the everyday Americans are talking about all the time. Welcome to the show, Kacee.
Real conversation about this serious issue.
Well, so tell us, what are the latest southern border developments? Because I guess you've been following these things closely, and we're doing other things while we've been doing other things.
Yeah, so the latest development is that we know that 7.3 million illegals have came through the southern border under the Biden administration. So this is just in the last 3 years, right? Ever since he's came into office, he has proliferated these numbers to a point to where it's unconstitutional, and we can see right through it. We have sanctuary cities set up in New York. We have places in California where these illegals are getting debit cards worth of $10,000, getting 2 meals a day and free shelter, when at the same time, the hardworking Americans aren't receiving these benefits.
What is a sanctuary city?
Yeah, so it's essentially a city that's set up by democratic institutions to give to the people that aren't necessarily citizens, and offering free amnesty to people who, like I said, should not be in this country if they haven't gone through the legal process. And this is the case. We have New York is a perfect example. Mayor Eric Adams, he was the one that issued the $10,000 debit card to every newcomer, is what they call it. So they essentially changed the definition of an illegal alien to a newcomer. So they're completely destroying America with these sanctuary cities and offering this prescription to people who certainly shouldn't be here.
Sorry, who decides if it's going to be a sanctuary city or not? Who anoints that title?
Yeah, so to my understanding, it's actually the local government that makes that decision. There is obviously, and the national decision itself does play a crisis, because, for instance, if you take like New York, right? One city follows this, and then others follow behind. So Boston, for instance, they saw what New York did. They're offering, I have a video on my Twitter, anyone can check it. There was a woman who stated she wasn't here legally. Basically, somebody opened the door, gifted her food, and said, here's your 2 meals a day. So these are set up by the local institutions that have so much power, and you see other states following behind. And I can't actually say this isn't every state in America. This is just a small amount of democratically run institutions that are set on dividing America and destroying our great nation we have here.
But so New York City gives illegal immigrants $10,000 on a kind of debit card. That's incredible. So if I went to America and said I'm a refugee from Sweden, from Swedish climate or something, I could get $10,000 on that card.
Sure.
That's incredible.
You'll get your $10,000 debit card.
Anyone who's thinking of heading to New York for a spring break, don't forget to call yourself a refugee. But I mean, there must be some pushback from the local media or the local politicians. I mean, that's taxpayers' money. Where's the democratic mandate for this, or the democratic pushback?
And that's what I asked myself, because New York clearly is not set on putting their economy over anything. They're, again, another thing, quite separately, they're so confident in what they're doing with this this bill by giving to illegals. They're saying, oh, we'll up the wage for Uber drivers and delivery drivers from $5 an hour to $20 an hour. So it tells me that New York and Eric Adams and everyone involved there has no interest, and maybe they do have the interest. They don't have the common sense to actually put into place a real functioning economy. And it's really sad to see, because I'm sure people who aren't from America see New York as, the Big Apple, the place everyone wants to see, one of the best cities in the world. Well, I can sadly say that's not the case anymore. And it just took a few short years for that to happen.
Well, we'll go into that just in a second, because New York is, I think, the dream city for most people in Europe. I mean, it's the sort of the pillar, or whatever, the ultimate symbol for everything that's good about America. And but we also associate America with a kind of dog eat dog environment. You've got to make it. You don't have this cushy welfare state to fall back on as we do in Europe. And that's why the best people go to America, because they're ready to fight and get ahead. But what you're sounding, New York, this dog eat dog, brilliant city, is more socialistic and generous than anything you see in Scandinavia. I mean, it's incredible what you're saying. Um, is so if we type in $10,000 into Google, New York City, and the guy name of the guy who put, it'll turn up. I mean, does the mainstream media write about this at all, or is it completely under the radar?
See, that's the craziest thing, right? Because the conspiracy theory, the conspiracy theories they like to suppress, but when it comes to this, they're wide open. They actually publish it on the front paper of the New York Post, a picture of Mayor Eric Adams saying, "We'll give you $10,000 debit card." It's got a picture of a debit card. They are with open arms welcoming anybody into New York, into anywhere in the country. And here's another thing that people don't understand, and this has not been talked about in the mainstream media. So it's not just the southern border that's getting flown in with all these illegals. This is happening in Yacumba, California. It's also happening in Vermont. So in Vermont, what's happening is illegals are being collected down south and they're being flown up north. And then they get dropped off in Canada. They essentially get their way to the northeastern part of the United States. So there's you can also go to my Twitter. There's Vermont residents are arming themselves, ready to possibly go into battle with these people because law enforcement is helping them out.
So is the demographics, the ethnic mixture in play? Because we associate Vermont as a kind of left-wing college place, highly educated, but also very white and very crime-free. Is that changing now? Is Vermont becoming multicultural?
It really is. And it doesn't matter what the previous background was. It can change overnight, it seems like. I mean, with the wrong people in power with the wrong intentions, like we see with the democratic institutions, it really doesn't take long. I mean, honestly, because as a person, as a conservative patriot person, I wouldn't have thought this would have been the case in just 3-4 short years. I could have said, maybe over 10 years, if we have such abysmal policies, maybe it could end up this way. But no, 3 short years is all it took. And it's partly the reason that I'm so set on fighting this battle.
So Kacee, what you said that New York is not what it used to be like. Could you expand on that? We've only got a minute left before news, but tell us what you're going to talk about after the break.
Yeah.
Well, just to introduce us to the topic. Okay. New York, in short, what will we look forward to hearing from you after the break? Just give us a couple of sentences.
Well, I think it's important to actually understand by visiting New York, and like someone like me who has in 2021, I can tell you the difference between what it was like when I visited compared to what it looks like today. So it's much different.
Right. I mean, are all these videos that you see on YouTube of people walking around like they're ghosts or zombies, like they're on drugs or something? You sometimes think it's like an installation art or some movie or something, because there was a movie made about these fentanyl. Do you actually see that in various cities, including New York? Is that a real scene or is it fake news?
It's very real. And I can say in San Francisco, it's arguably the worst. You can just walk down the block. You know how, for instance, and before we go to break, if you go to Hollywood, actually, you know how you can walk down, you see the stars of all the celebrities. Well, you can't see that anymore because there are tents of homeless people bombarded all throughout the streets.
Right. Okay. So we'll just go into a quick news break and we'll get back to you after. This is the Pelle Neroth Taylor Show on TNT News Talk. Back after a break.
TNT Radio.live.
Welcome back to the Pelle Neroth Taylor Show on this Tuesday afternoon. We've got Kacee with us, who's a 23-year-old journalist and a patriot and a freedom lover, who's telling us about how New York and American cities are seriously degraded compared to what Europeans might remember them as. So you're saying San Francisco, that walk of fame, where you see those stars, that's completely overrun by homeless people. And what about New York, for instance? Is that are there many places there that are kind of overrun?
Yeah, it's ideally the same picture when it comes to New York and San Francisco and even Hollywood. But when it comes to New York, yes, it's very bombarded with many people who are homeless, drug addicted, and are zombie-like figures. Like you said, they aren't actually functioning like real people. And the funny thing is that New York and the law enforcement just let it happen. They don't prosecute these people. They just let them go as they are. And when it comes to violent crime, like these people could be robbing stores, looting Macy's. All they get is a slap on the wrist, a citation, and they're free, or they get out the next day. So it's a drug issue. It's a crime issue. It's an immigration issue. It's all these things combined in one I guess, specific area where we're at now, it just created an egregious society in America just in literally three short years.
Well, it's interesting because also, again, we see on YouTube, sometimes it's groups, often they're young blacks, who kind of go into a store and loot everything into black bin bags. You know, they'll sweep everything off the shelf and then they run away. And are you saying they're not prosecuted? Because I've had people on this show who get like 17-year-old, long jail sentences for peaceful protest at January 6th, and they're not prosecuted at all here for actually doing what I consider to be real crime. So political protest is a crime, but stealing things is not a crime. Is that modern America?
So it's a bit of a different scenario with January 6th. I will say I've interviewed several people who were protesters there, and they were prosecuted, many of them in which there's actually a woman who I'm friends with, Isabella DeLuca. She's a very famous influencer. She was just charged for simply holding a table from January 6th.
Yeah.
But so in America, we have...
no, I agree with you. I mean, I was saying they were prosecuted. Yeah, I was convoluted. Yeah.
100%. I think now they're more it's a political persecution for January 6ers more than not, over than the people that are, drug addicted, homeless people on the streets.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And people who are looting stores. I'm not saying that neither of them are prosecuted. There are people from both sides that have been prosecuted, looters and J6ers.
Right.
When it comes to the looters, though, it's very obvious what's going on. I'd have to actually look at the numbers, but the fact that these people are looting stores and repeating the same offenses because they get out so soon and they don't feel like they were, punished enough to actually not do it again, repeat the same offense. They continuously do it 5, 10, 20 times, and they are still free to this day. I'm not going to specifically drop names, but it's happening in real time.
So is it an organized plot to sort of destabilize America? Are there political forces behind these looters, or who's protecting them? Is it the local police forces who've signed up to this? Is it Black Lives Matter or this social justice program, or what is it? What is it that prevents them from being put in jail, or taken out of the system, taken out of freedom?
Yeah, from my perspective, this is a much bigger issue than people actually realize. This isn't just in America. This is a globalist plot to destroy the world. If you've seen it, Agenda 21, it actually says this is a public statement. The World Economic Forum and globalist leaders are intentionally trying to make a one world government, one currency, and basically ban private ownership. These are real talked about things that are being mentioned in Davos, Switzerland for once a year in the World Economic Forum. This is a plan that's, again, it's happening in real time, and it just shows it's more evident to me that it's actually real because we see it. We see at the same time an influx of illegal immigrants. Economy in America is doing very bad. Law enforcement isn't prosecuting anybody. It's almost like the 2030 agenda. It's actually happening. It's a globalist plot to not only destroy America, because America, arguably we are the global power of the world. That could, you could argue with China now, but we realistically always have been. And that's what they want to do. They want to take us down, and they're going to do the same with everybody else. They want one world currency, one governed by one person and one set of people. That's what my opinion. Anyone can look up and do the research, but that's my personal take on it.
Do you think that some of these 8 million people who've arrived and during Biden's presidency, are they going to be mobilized to vote and secure a victory for Biden in November's elections? Is that the ulterior motive?
I think it is. And it's a very scary precedent we're setting in this country, because if we're allowing people who don't even have the ability and legal opportunity to vote, then we're destroying the democracy, the constitution in which this country is built on. That's the goal here. They want cheap labor. They want illegal votes to vote Democrat, because keep in mind, Eric Adams, the Democratic institutions, they're the ones handing these debit cards out. The left institutions, they are funding all this. They are behind the plot of what we call the Agenda 21, or the globalist plot to infiltrate America.
Right, we've got a couple of minutes left. Maybe you could talk about the P. Diddy raid. Is he the same as Puff Daddy? Am I confused? I'm not up to date.
Yeah. So P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, he's a pretty known rapper. He's been in the
same
industry
person, right? It's not two different people.
Yeah,
it's the same. Okay,
yeah, same person.
I know he's a rapper. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there were like 3 different nicknames I saw, and people posted about him. But yeah, with P. Diddy, it's a very newly developed story, and I can't specifically say I know everything about it, but from what I've seen and information I've gathered, I've been able to make inferences as to what I think. Now, it is pretty interesting that there's been a lot of influential figures who have been charged with sexual allegations over the past 4 or 5 years, right? You have Donald Trump, Andrew Tate, Russell Brand. You have a lot of influential figures. So I took that into account, but I did some research. I saw that in the early 2000s, P. Diddy was accused of sexual assault by his executive producer, several people on his team, that he claims that P. Diddy forced women to do these sexual acts that, again, they aren't legal and very unethical. And it really, portrays the type of character this guy has. But this is something that went on for a long time, and nobody was able to speak up, because P. Diddy, he's a very, very powerful man in the hip hop industry. And, he's got ties with Donald Trump, with very influential figures throughout the country. So many have come to the conclusion or the possible inference that P. Diddy could be involved in some sort of syndicate or a crime ring that ties him to possibly figures like Jeffrey Epstein, Mossad. And even the craziest thing is that he hired the same lawyer that Ghislaine Maxwell, who, if you're familiar with the Jeffrey Epstein case, she was his partner in crime. He hires the same lawyer to work on his case. So, I mean, there's a lot of strange things. And the actual, when it comes down to his story, he flew, they thought that he left the country on his private jet from California to South America. Well, then we come to find out that he was in Florida and he was at a private airport. Then we assumed he went from Florida out of the country. But then we come and find out that he was in Florida the entire time. And the weirdest thing is he's not been arrested. He's not been taken in by law enforcement. So it's a very strange case.
So to summarize, you think, like Jeffrey, maybe he's acting as an agent to get a lot of people to do blackmailable things that they can be blackmailed by, in order to control them, in the same way that Jeffrey Epstein was doing it for the politicians, and presumably for the music industry class and leading musicians. Anyway, I'm sure we'll follow up on that on another guest. Thanks a lot, Kacee. Kacee Allen, who's an American patriot and has his own show of that name, Kacee, Kacee Allen Show. Thanks a lot, Kacee. Talk to you soon. Brilliant summary of events. I knew Ghislaine Maxwell, and started my career. I was working for a paper called The European, which was owned by her father, Robert Maxwell, and she was a Paris correspondent, but I don't think she turned up to any of the conferences or anything. Anyway, that's in the distant past. Thanks a lot. We've got our next guest coming up after a very quick break. Thanks a lot.